This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Pulley, and I am pleased to welcome you to the PTSA Meet the Candidates Night. Please take a moment to silence your phones before we begin. This year, there are 4 candidates running for 2 open seats on the Board of Education. They are, from my far right, Martha Scurro, Mark Kakanovich, Cindy Sabri, and Christina Lee. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for an introduction and opening statement. Following the opening statements, we will take questions from our audience here in the boardroom and from viewers at home. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. At the conclusion of our event, each candidate will have an opportunity to provide a closing statement. If you would like to phone in a question, the number to call is 585-242-5200, extension 5096. You will see this displayed on your television screen during the course of this broadcast. You can also submit questions via Twitter at Brighton Believe or through the Brighton Central School District's Facebook page. Those in-house may write your questions on index cards and submit them to Ellie Rosenblum. At this time, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's moderator, Sherry Johnson, Executive Director of the Monroe County School Boards Association. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, everyone. I also want to welcome all of you to the Brighton Central School District Meet the Candidate Night, and I also want to thank the Brighton PTSA for hosting this evening's event, as well as asking me to facilitate. Providing community residents the opportunity to meet and listen to the viewpoints of the candidates that are asking to serve as elected board trustees is key to participating in our democratic process and as an informed voter. The process has already been explained to everyone, and the cards have been shown for the timekeeper for when you have 15 seconds to answer your question, and a red card means the time's up. As moderator, I have the discretion to combine similar questions, reword questions, or rule out inappropriate or repetitious questions before I ask them, and my decision is final. We will work to end either when questions are finished or around 8:30 so that you guys can make your closing remarks, of which you'll have 2 minutes to do so.
Thank you.
So are you ready for opening remarks?
We are.
Okay, Ms. Scurro, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Martha Scurro, and I've been a member of your Board of Education since 2001. I've lived in Brighton for almost 31 years, choosing to move here for the schools and diverse community. Our children both graduated from Brighton High School, daughter Joey in 2001 and son Frankie in 2005. My husband Frank is retired after teaching mechanical engineering at RIT for 34 years. And I spent my time as a school community volunteer and also worked part-time as a bookseller at Barnes & Noble in the children's department. And I love and believe in Brighton schools and want today's students to have the same opportunities that my children were so fortunate to have. Becoming a member of the board was really a culmination of these many years of involvement. When our children started school, I started school too, helping with school events, PTSA events, whatever was needed. I've chaired many things for PTSA, including community service projects, ice cream socials, activity nights, closure parties, Spring Fest, and was a parent liaison for both of my children's classes at the high school. I still chair Festival of Ideas, which I've done for the past 25 years. It is my favorite volunteer activity. Sorry, fellow board members. I've been fortunate to have served in leadership roles as PTSA co-chair at both Council Rock and the high school, and I've been president of Central PTSA. And before throwing my hat in the Board of Ed ring, I served as PTSA rep to the board for 6 years, which I found a great learning experience for duties as a board member. Our kids played sports, so I became involved in their booster clubs and was on the Brighton Baseball Board for many years. And I've been a trustee on the Brighton Education Fund since 2000. Over these 17 years as a board member, I've served as vice president, as board rep to PTSA, and rep on countless district committees, including Curriculum Council, Wellness, Facilities, and Health and Safety. And I continue to attend numerous Monroe County School Board and New York State School Board Association meetings and workshops on a variety of educational topics. Along the way, I was so very honored to receive PTSA Life Membership Award and the Brighton Rotary Citizen of the Year Award. All of these experiences and responsibilities, both large and small, have given me a deep knowledge and understanding of our district, which I find invaluable. Brighton believes in integrity, respect, responsibility, kindness, and self-control. These district values not only mirror my own, but serve as the guiding principles for decisions made by your board. I am so proud to be part of this board and this school district that always puts kids first, that maximizes opportunities for all students, and puts them on a path of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kokonovich.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. I am Mark Kokonovich. I live on Clover Hills Drive, and my wife Jean and I have been Brighton residents for 25 years. And we moved in Labor Day weekend, and our oldest daughter started first grade at Council Rock 2 days later. And 1 week after that, I began my career of service in the school district by helping out at Council Rock and in her classroom. I received a bachelor's degree in business administration, and I was full-time employed in the precision metalworking industry until a while back when I decided to move on, and I am now a full-time community volunteer and advocate. As I mentioned, Jean and I choose to be empty nesters and love Brighton and plan to stay here. We have 2 adult children, Kate, who graduated in 2005, and Bethany, who graduated in 2007. I am currently on the Brighton Board of Education. I have been since 2006. My fellow board members have elected me board president beginning in 2009 up to the present day. I currently serve on the district's Diversity and Equity Committee, Safety Committee, the Audit Committee, and Start Time Committees, along with the District Curriculum Council. I have been active in Monroe County School Boards Association, serving as president for 2 terms, and currently serve on the Executive and Legislative Committees. I also am a member of the Act for Education Public Education Advocacy Committee. I'm proud to serve the town of Brighton in a number of ways, including the town's Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Board, where I am co-chair. I'm also a member of the Town of Brighton Comprehensive Plan Review Committee, along with the Brighton Veterans Memorial Committee. Proud to be a 25-year PTSA member, and also a past recipient of the PTSA Lifetime Membership Award. I serve on the Wilmot Cancer Institute Advisory Board, along with the Pancreatic Cancer Association of Western New York Advisory Board. And I'm very proud to have received the Brighton Rotary Citizen of the Year Award for 2017. Currently, I'm also involved in multiple activities with local nonprofit organizations, but the vast majority of my time is devoted to Brighton schools and public education. And we are so fortunate to live in an exceptionally strong and supportive community that does place the highest priority and respect on the education of all of our children. And it has been an honor and really truly a pleasure to serve this community as a member of a very dedicated and devoted Board of Education. I continue to have the passion for our students and families, the commitment to the work at hand, and the time to devote to this important work. And I pledge to continue to work responsibly and prudently as a member of our highly effective governance team. It would be a privilege to continue to serve our community by helping to preserve and grow all that is a Brighton education. And I am most appreciative of the continuing support from our Brighton community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sabri.
Thank you.
You're
Good
welcome.
evening. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for organizing this, everyone who was involved. My name is Cindy Sabri. I'm a 15-year Brighton resident and Rochester native who grew up initially in the 19th Ward. I graduated from Churchville Chili High School. I have a bachelor's degree in communications management from Ithaca College and an MBA in marketing from Fordham University in New York, where I had a career in advertising, media, and entertainment for almost 20 years. I returned to Rochester in 2002 to be closer to family, and for the last 6 years, I've been working at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and currently I hold the position of Executive Director of Marketing and Donor Relations in the Division of Development and Alumni Relations. Most importantly, I am a single mother by choice through adoption of 2 amazing teenage daughters who are actually attending Brighton schools as I speak. I have a long-standing commitment to giving back. I've been a champion of social justice and the empowerment of underrepresented groups, including women. I have a passion for children and adoption, and I've been extremely active in the adoption community for the last 16 years. I have volunteered my time and talents to a number of organizations, both here and in New York, in pursuit of their missions. I was a Girl Scout leader for 10 years, I am currently an alumna volunteer for both of my alma maters, and I am active in my place of worship, and I have been a volunteer in our schools and in the athletic programs here. I am running for school board because I want to make a meaningful impact on my community, and because I believe that education is the greatest gift we can give our children. I ran unsuccessfully for school board last year, some of you may remember, and I am running again because, quite frankly, I don't give up. I have a passion for education, diversity, and volunteerism, and I am very passionate about this school district. I strongly believe this school board would benefit from some new faces, some new ideas, and some very new perspectives. I have what it takes to be a successful and contributing member of this board. My knowledge of higher education combined with my experience in communications, development, and management will lend considerable knowledge, skills, and abilities to this board. I will take this role very seriously, and I will listen and be the voice of all Brighton families and a strong advocate for fulfilling the mission and vision of Brighton schools. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee.
Hello, my name is Christina Lee, and I have 3 reasons why I'm running for Brighton's Board of Education. I am a graduate of this district, and I cherish the time that I spent here as a child. Some of you may even remember me as Tina. I want to give back to the community that was the foundation for my own education and is now setting a foundation for my own children. And third, I have 3 children in the district currently. My oldest daughter, Mia, is a 10th grader at the high school. Rose is a 7th grader at TCMS, and Oscar is a 5th grader at Frez. My experience as a parent, a teacher, and educator at Monroe Community College, and my own journey as a student in public institutions strengthened my dedication to public education. Public education is an equalizer. It allows children from many diverse backgrounds to sit in classrooms together and be challenged by the rigor of the curricula, and serves as a space to create community for families and their students. As a teacher at MCC, I am always humbled by my students' dedication to attend college while working 2 jobs, taking care of children and extended family, or starting school again after some bumpy starts and stops. While we all hope to give our children the path of least resistance as they leave Brighton to attend college and find their first full-time jobs, I think it is also imperative for us to create an equitable path in our district for all our children to reach their full potential and prepare them to persevere as they face challenges in the ever-changing world around them. One of the things that I love most about Brighton is that its dedication to educating the whole child. I hope to continue in that tradition by helping to shape the work of the Brighton Blueprint and using my skills, passion, and experience to provide insight to the Board of Education and having a seat at the table. Thanks.
Thank you for all of your remarks. That actually helped us consolidate some of the questions because you were so thorough in your responses. So I'm going to begin with just a couple general governance questions, and those are also being asked by your community. And after we go through those, then we'll move on to some of the other questions that are being asked. Again, we start with Ms. Scurro Mano because of her placement on the ballot. And so the first question that all of you will be answering is, hang on a second. What specific policies would you like to see changed in Brighton schools? And how do you think governance can be improved? And what would be your role in that process?
Specific policies that I'd like to see change. We work on policies. That's one of the things that the board does. Boards work as a whole. We have no power on our own. We set policy, we hire the superintendent, and approve the budget. So within those parameters, that's how we work on policy. That's what we do as a board of whole. I don't have any specific policies that I think need changing right now. We update and work on policies all of the time. And we always, at every board meeting, there'll be changes and updates that we approve to policies that are on the books or policies that are in the work. So I can't think of a specific policy that I'd like to change right now. Because like I said, it's always a work in progress.
Thank you. Mr. Khanna, same question?
Yeah, I guess I would answer similarly to Martha. I can think of one, actually, it's one of the ballot initiatives. It has to do with a policy on transportation. It's not a huge issue, but it has to do with distance that students may walk to school. And so that is a board policy. And that particular policy, because it involves student transportation, the state requires it to be on the ballot as an initiative. And we're asking the voters to approve that. It's a very minor change, but it'll allow us some flexibility moving forward. and how we use our transportation system to maybe solve some of the other issues that I'm sure we're going to touch on this evening. So that would be one that comes to mind. I would, again, reiterate, we are a very organized group in terms of policy review on a constant basis. We utilize a policy service out of the Buffalo area that many school districts use. And we also have a staff person. Well, actually, she works for us now more on a as-needed basis, but she's an attorney, has policy practice with us. So we are constantly reviewing all of the policies that are in our book right now, and also with in an eye toward those changes that are coming from the federal and the state government. It's a constant work, it's a constant upgrade, and the board is continually reviewing those, and they go through a first and second read process whereby folks are welcome to comment. So I guess that's how I would answer the question.
Thank you. And if I read a three-part question and you wanted me to repeat it, just ask, and I'm more than happy to repeat it. Ms. Sabri.
I guess, as Martha said, no specific policies coming to mind, but I know that there are some significant hot buttons in this district that there are plenty of parents who feel pretty strongly about. I don't know if policy is around school start times, for example, but I do know that that's a hot button area with a lot of passion around it. But, as a member of the board, it would be my job to get up to speed on policies and certainly weigh in and keep the thoughts and opinions and wants and desires of, all the residents and all the families here in Brighton before policies are set.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee.
I guess I would agree also that I can't say which specific policy that I would want changed, but I think that I would draw on the institutional knowledge of the board members and try and understand what issues are important for our community. I do also know that there are many issues that our community is currently trying to we have many dedicated parents who are really interested, for example, in school start time and more work in diversity and equity and inclusion. And I would hope, and I think the board has already said that it is a continual process. It's constantly changing. It's always a work in progress. And I think keeping those issues on the table is a great thing.
Great. So we'll stay right along with that theme. And Mr. Khanna, you get the next question first, and that is, what do you see as the biggest issues the district will have to deal with in the next 3 years?
I guess there are, every single day brings a whole list of issues that we deal with, and they can change, and some get higher priority than others. I think the blueprint work that we've done over the past 4 or 5 years to create a process by which we continually review what we've done, how we've done, and what we're going to go forward with. I think first and foremost, always at the forefront of my mind and all board members' minds is safety, security, and wellness of our families and our kids. So that's a continual situation that we review on an ongoing basis, and it involves so many things. It's not just security from a doors and locks and security guard standpoint. It has to do with mental health supports, community supports for families. So that's probably the key thing that I think of most often at the top of our list. We always have the issue of balancing the wants of everyone with the resources that we have. We have a $78 million spending plan, but there's never enough to do everything for everybody. So one of the challenges we always have as a board and a leadership team is to continually weigh the needs of an entire K-12 population and prioritize in what we bring forward in that spending plan each year. The funding stream always is going to be a difficult situation in Brighton because of the way New York State underfunds districts like us. It's a pet peeve of mine. We continually go to Albany. We work with Joe Morelli and Joe Robach. We were able to secure a Brighton fix that's unique and really rare in Albany to get us up to speed so that we're sort of shorted like everybody else, but still 67% of what we do comes from local property taxpayers, and that will be a continual challenge for us as time goes forward.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sabri.
I think that given the world that we currently live in, which is bigger than Brighton, I agree with Mark in that safety is my number one concern these days. And I would imagine it's on the minds of most parents and families in this community. There's a lot going on, and I know that the schools and the board are taking steps to ensure that our children are safe at school. But things change pretty rapidly these days, and I think that we need to be focused and conscious of what's going on around us so that we can make some good decisions here while also keeping our balanced budget and while also trying to address all the other concerns that are out there. But it's already been said, mental health is part of that safety issue, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
I would say in the next 3 years, some of the things that I think that I would be interested in continuing a dialogue on would be looking at the mental health well-being of our children. I think that's a really important topic, and I think that to understand that safety and security, our children should feel safe and secure in school without having it feel like a prison. And I think that those are policies that we have to address continually because the world is so different today than it was 30 years ago. I would also be interested in continuing efforts to increase diversity in our teaching faculty, continuing education for our professional and teaching staff and our students and our administration on issues around implicit bias and equity. So I think, I guess those would be my top things that I would.
Excellent. And Ms. Mano.
When you're number 4 in the line, there's not much left to be said because I agree
why we
with
rotate
absolutely everything that has been. Safety and security is of the utmost importance, the mental health of our students, and of course the constant battle really about of funding. Throw the tax cap in there and you've got just loads of fun when we're dealing with budgets. I also just want to say along the real world comments that have been mentioned, we deal on a daily basis with that challenging real world that seemingly takes over the good and the kind that we try and teach our children, and that I think is important. It's a great concern to me too.
Excellent. Okay, and Ms. Sabri, you get the next question, and I'm moving a little bit into the fiscal area. And so the question that came forward is, what is your understanding of the school budget process in our district state aid?
Well, I'm certainly not an expert because I don't currently don't sit on the board, so I would have to get up to speed. But I understand the challenges that have been faced over the years. I recall all the efforts for fight for Brighton, and I think those initial challenges have been overcome. But it's not a permanent fix to my understanding, and so I think this board and this district needs to continue to work with constituents in our community to continue to fight for what is right from the state and make sure that we are weighing the interests of all of our constituents to ensure that from a budget responsibility perspective that we are addressing things that are not just a priority for the board but a priority for those in the community. So, taking the pulse, doing the research, bringing the information back, being very communicative and transparent. I think more work needs to be done there to be truly successful in not only managing budgets and putting programs and resources in place, but to make sure the community fully understands what's what.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
First, I just wanted to commend all the parents who worked on Fight for Brighton. That was a brilliant campaign, really. I thought the parents did such a great job in terms of community outreach and engaging many parents to help advocate to keep fair keep money coming into our district. I think the parents understood that we were underfunded and really fought to try to raise the funding that we were given. I know that we haven't reached actually the money that we lost in all those years that we were underfunded. So I think that will be a priority probably for the board going forward. And I think, I think what that Fight for Brighton showed is really how important our parent involvement is and what kind of change can actually come from utilizing the incredible pool of parents that we have in this community. So.
Thank you, Ms. Scurro.
And part of the question was the budget process. Am I correct
Yeah,
about
what
that?
is your understanding of the school budget process in our
Right.
district state
And
aid?
we've talked a lot about the Fight for Brighton and the marvelous work that they did to secure the funds that we were rightly deserving of. That only gets us to a certain point. Unfortunately, all good, but only to a certain point, and now we seem to be in the same boat as everyone else, still underfunded, but still in a way better place than we were before. The budget process is an all-year process. Our staff works very hard, our administrators work very hard on it all year long. We do survey the community, and we take that survey very seriously and work with it and work from it and utilize it when we make our decisions. So that's very important, and I'm hoping that a lot of people in this room took the survey because we really do pay attention to the survey. So that's, I think, but I definitely would agree that the Fight for Brighton was absolutely wonderful, showed the power of parents, the power of involvement, of community action, and but the budget process is a full year process, and we all work very hard at it, and we're all very proud of the work that we do, and our administrators too.
Excellent, thank you. And Mr. Kakanovich.
The part of the question is the school budget process, which is the boring part of the question. So
Right.
that's really why.
That's what we've all kind
But
of
just
avoided.
quickly, as others have said, we take the budgetary process very, very seriously. We always have in Brighton. It's an extensive process. It's ongoing. It's year-round. The budgeting process is tied to our blueprint planning process. So everything is circular and feeds each other as we go along. Priorities get developed, and priorities then get funded based on K-12 application. And priorities get discussed with the broader community along with the school community itself. And at points in time, this is where a board comes together. A board is a governance body of 7. I'm not an individual, Martha's not. So we get together with Dr. McGowan and our leadership team, and we began the hard work of determining those priorities that are going to get funded, not just for 1 year, but we're always looking at least 5 years out in our planning. Last year, we approved a $65 million, the voters approved $65 million capital facilities project plan. So that now feeds into our planning process because we're going to be going out to sell that debt on the market. And that feeds into what we do and what we plan for each year. And it's been prudently planned for so that we will be able to budget over the next 5, 10, and 15 years to not only handle our ongoing budget needs year over year, but the full modernization of all of our K-12 facilities over that period of time, which results in full day K in September 2021. We want to make sure we message that often and as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Lee, you get the first question. The next question first, is how I should say it. And I'm combining quite a few because the table's filling up with this particular question, but I like the way this particular citizen community member sent it in, so I'm going to read it and let you all take it from here. How do you propose to balance fiscal responsibility with meeting the health and welfare needs of all students? Specifically, how do you propose addressing the alignment of school start times with adolescents' biological clocks?
So it's a school start, say, it's a fiscal.
Yeah, how do you propose to balance fiscal responsibility with meeting the health and welfare needs of, and I added all students, they said our students.
Okay.
Specifically, how do you propose addressing the alignment of school start times with adolescents' biological clocks?
Yeah. Well, I remember last year, 2 years ago, when we took the survey, there was a no-cost option in terms of the late school start time for the high school. I thought that was a fantastic option. It didn't take away from any of the needs of our students in terms of programming, but it allowed for our students who have that teen time clock to get the rest that they needed. This is actually an issue that we've talked about with our pediatrician for a few years, when we noticed that our oldest and then our middle couldn't get to bed early enough and wasn't waking up early. And there was a lot of research to show that the teen clock is just different and that teens need more rest. So, you know, I think it's a very important issue in terms of balancing our the health and well-being of our students. And if there is an option that was presented to us that is a no-cost option, I think that we should look at that seriously and have further discussion on that.
Thank you. Ms. Mano?
Start time. Okay, we are in process, and we definitely are, and we appreciate the passionate voices that we hear on this topic. No one on the board is disputing the science behind this, and I really fully believe that, I think we all think, that this will definitely happen in time. We are doing a thoughtful and responsible job of looking at all sides of this issue. Believe it or not, there are people who have a different opinion of start time. But, again, I say no one is disputing the science, and I do believe this will happen. There are many options on the table and many things to consider. I believe we're going to have a report, and we likely will survey the community one more time. Given that we're going to be narrowing down the choices, we'd like to get an opinion about those narrower choices. It was a broad array of choices before. I think we're going to take some choices and give the community an opportunity to weigh in on those. But it's an important topic for our kids, and we're in process. We're working very hard to get to a better place. I hope that other districts are doing as thoughtful a job as we are, and that we all sort of get to the same place together, because that would make it a lot easier to do a school start time later if everybody was on the same page.
Thank you. Mr. Kakanovich?
Yeah, obviously this topic is of interest to many, many folks, and we could talk about this from this 7:30 to 11:30 this evening and not finish the topic. I will say this, I agree with Martha. I personally, and the school board as it sits currently, is in favor of our secondary school kids starting later, contrary to some of the opinion expressed by folks who continue to give us a hard time. It's a difficult issue. We have worked on this in Brighton right now for almost 2 years. We talked about this 10 years ago. Districts all over the country have looked at this, and some have changed, but not a lot have changed. What happens is, and Christina mentioned the no-cost option, that really isn't a viable option any longer. When options were first put together based on some early data of what we thought might work and survey the community, that's very early information now. We know a lot more, but we don't know everything yet. The Start Time Committee, which I have been a part of since the beginning, we are expecting the committee to report out by the end of June. We expect a full transportation study from a consultant that the district hired. And at that point in time, I expect that work will feed the summer priority work. And we'll look at it in detail to figure out when. My guess is it might be when full day K starts in September 2021, because we are going to have a dramatic change at that point in time to transportation. The problem with this is it affects every student, every family, every employee, and not easily solved. If it was easily solved and cost effective, all of the districts in Monroe County would be there right now. We're all talking about it, board presidents are meeting about it, and superintendents are meeting about it. And we'll continue to work on it, and it will happen. It's just, I understand with some folks, they want it done now. So I'm respectful of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sabri?
Well, there's not much more I can add, except that I've received a barrage of questions on a Facebook group on this very topic, and some of you are grinning, so you probably know what I'm talking about. I don't dispute the science. I think we need to get to a place where we're doing the right thing by the students, but I don't think we should sacrifice fiscal responsibility for that, because as Martha alluded, there are people out there who disagree with changing start times, and I think we need to be respectful of their thoughts. But as a parent with children currently in the schools, a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, I see very up close and personal the challenges that these kids face. But I will tell you, their days are long to begin with. They're not going to bed before 11 o'clock. There's a boatload of homework that these kids get, and there's a lot of extracurriculars. So, there are things we probably need to look at within our own selves, our own families. But I do think that the largest frustration that I think the parents are feeling is that it's taking a long time. And it's been a couple of years. And while I respect that a thoughtful process is probably the best process, there are things that we can do to move things along. Because truthfully, if business worked this snail pace, we'd have missed the boat a long time ago. We got to seize the day and move things forward.
Thank you very much. Now we're back to the beginning of the order. So, Ms. Scurro, you get the first of the fifth question.
Or the next.
Right. And again, I've combined quite a bit. This is another one that brought a lot of cards to the table. And so I'm going to take this particular question and just add a little piece to it. What work can the board do to further expand diversity and equity work? How does policy play a role in promoting diversity and equity? And I'd like you to address that not just for students, but students and staff. So how does the board work to expand diversity and equity? How does policy play a role in that? And how do you do that for both students and staff?
Well, policy definitely plays a role in it because we have policies related directly to diversity for both students and staff. So we are constantly, as I said, we constantly review policies and change them to make our district work better. As far as diversity and equity, we are constantly working on this. It's a top priority for the Board of Education right now. And we are remembering all kinds of diversity: race, religion, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic, and diverse learners as well, all part of the diversity umbrella. We are tackling this. We used our summer retreat to work on this, to get the ball rolling on some of those priorities. The Superintendent Conference Day that was just held last week was devoted to diversity training. There was a student panel who told powerful stories of their experiences in Brighton, and that's just going to help us do better work. So those are the kinds of things that we can do, listening to students and staff about their experiences here and responding to that. When Kevin McGowan sent out a thank you note to the students who participated, he said something beautiful, and I remembered it. And he said to the kids, "You told us your stories from the heart, and we will respond with our hearts." And that's what we do here. That's what we try to do. And as long as we keep that in the top of our minds, the kindness and the compassion that we want to show everyone, we want to celebrate diversity, we will get to a better place than where we want to be.
Thank you. Mr. Kokanovich.
Yeah, I think Martha touches on it. I think I would categorize it as continuing a long history of celebrating diversity in all of its forms in Brighton. And I guess I would say we need to do a better job as a district of communicating to parents and families on where we are and what we're actively working on. And it's difficult because there are so many things right now that we're actively working on that are in process, if you will. Martha mentioned professional development. Our staff has had at least 2 full staff development days regarding culturally responsive curriculum, implicit bias, things like this. We are committed to this being an ongoing, organic element of what we do every day, not a checkoff box, not a program that we hold once a week or once a month or once a year or bring an outside consultant in for. Our curriculum council work this year, which I'm part of, has been devoted this year to the work of culturally responsive curriculum, how our teachers teach, what they teach, looking at implicit bias, along with some outside experts. The Diversity and Equity Committee that we established last summer has had 4 meetings. It's been a slow go. The work is difficult. It requires lengthy, detailed conversation. All voices need to be heard. The work is beginning to intertwine with each other, and I'm very proud personally of being involved in it. It's important to me personally in all of the ways that diversity is defined, but the equity aspect of it and the inclusion aspect of it is something very important to us. And we are a member of a hiring consortium. We're beginning to see applicants this year for the first time through a minority recruitment program. So there are ongoing efforts that are part of who Brighton is that I think we need to do a better job of explaining to parents and families. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien?
Those that know me know diversity is one of my hot buttons because I parent diverse children. And when your kid comes home and shares with you the implicit bias that they have experienced personally, you take that to heart and you want to do something to fix that. So I've had several conversations with our superintendent and our administrators and some of our faculty. And while I think the student body is incredibly diverse, the person standing at the front of the room every day in those classrooms isn't. And I completely agree, diversity is not what you can see completely, it's what you can see. And diversity of thought is relevant too. But I think this district, while I applaud the fact it's a priority, there's a lot more that needs to be done to make sure that faculty are not using microaggressions, are not falling to that implicit bias. I know it's hurtful. My kids have told me what they've experienced it themselves and what they've seen other kids experience. So this, I can go on and I'll get emotional if I do, but the reality is we're not doing enough, so more needs to be done.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
So I have been a longtime advocate for diversity in education since I was a student. And I think, I've looked through the Brighton blueprint. I think we do great updates in terms of constantly thinking about the priorities of this district and constantly making sure that the top priorities remain as something to be discussed. I do think, as Cindy said about the school start times, that we do tend to move at a very slow pace. And I know that we're being thoughtful and balanced about our decision making, but we don't actually reflect the Brighton community in our school district. We have many people we have people of color in this community. We have refugees and immigrants. We have people who learn in different ways, economic diversity, queer identity, but we also still have institutional and structural barriers, I think, to equity. I don't think we don't see diversity in our leaders, in our administration, and even in our teachers. And I think that the work, when we do diversity and inclusion work, some of it can be done with professional development. Some of it is done with personal awareness and some sort of self work. But I think we need to make more concerted, and I know that the district is making more efforts with the committees that have been formed and with the work that I'm seeing on the blueprint, that it is a priority for this district. I think we could do a better job of maybe reaching out to historically Black colleges and universities.
Thank you very much. Mark, Mr. Kakanovich, you get the next question first. And I'm holding two in my hands, but I'm gonna move over a little bit. You guys answered the diversity, equity, inclusion question well, even though there are some more pieces to that here at the table we might get back
Question
to.
would keep us here all evening. So
Yeah.
That's okay. That's great stuff.
There are two really good questions here, and you've touched on them a little bit, so I thought I would talk about them now. How would you ensure that the district keeps the residents well informed of the priorities for the school year?
How would I ensure?
That the district
Yeah.
keeps the residents well informed of the priorities, many that you've talked about here
Okay.
tonight for the school year.
My fellow board members and Dr. McGowan and Dan Goldman, our Director of Communications, would tell you that I am harping on this all the time. We need to do a better job. I think we do a good job, and I hate to compare us. I mean, I do think in so many ways Brighton does a better job at almost everything we do than almost all other districts. That doesn't mean we're perfect, and that doesn't mean we rest on laurels. We're always moving forward. We need to do a better job through multiple platforms of explaining to residents the ongoing work. The diversity equity question is a great example. There is a tremendous amount of work, real work, that has been going on for a long time, that continues to go on. And it's difficult work. When you're working with a majority white teaching staff, you can work with that group to see these biases, to understand culturally responsive curriculum, to put yourself in another person's shoes. And when that work is ongoing and deep, we don't communicate it very well to the community. And that's true of so many other things. I kind of joked at one of our last board meetings that I wanted a new branding of when full day K starts, and I wanted Dan pumping it out once a month to the community, because we get emails all the time from folks that haven't been involved in that process over the past 3 or 4 years, when full day K comes, and why does it take so long, and what will Council Rock look like when it's rebuilt. And I think we do such great work, and our students, our kids are the best. They do such great work on a daily basis, their accomplishments, their achievements, just their voice. And we need to do a better job through multiple platforms of getting that out to the community. I'm pledging to you, we will do better at that.
Thank you. Ms. Sabri.
I've been in marketing and communications for 30 some odd years, so I actually do this for a living, and big worldwide brands have paid me to do it. So you don't hide your light under a bushel, and I've had this conversation with our administrators. You have to tell your own story, and if you're out there telling it, nobody else is going to do it for you. So in the course of getting my signatures for the petition, I talked with parents that I knew well, parents I didn't know at all. And the amount of misinformation that is out there is astonishing, because of all the districts in this county, I think we've got one with some pretty involved parents. So when I'm talking to a parent of a high school senior, and that's the last child that's going to move through this district, I'm shaking my head going, oh my goodness, how do you not know these things that are going on? So clearly, we're not doing enough, and I agree, way more needs to be done. Because if I'm imparting information to someone who's got kids older than I do, that seems a little off to me. So we need to definitely do a far better job, and no disrespect to those who are doing the job for the district, but it's clearly not being done to the standard that it needs to be done, because I know how it can work, because that's what I get paid to do, 40 hours during the week.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Lee?
This also has been an interesting process for me. I think getting signatures for the candidacy for the board. I have talked to a lot of parents who really are either misinformed or just don't know how things work in the district. And I think the district sends out many emails. They try and be as open as they can in terms of letting people know what's happening in the district. But I think all of us are inundated with emails and often don't open them. So I would be a big proponent of actually going door to door, meeting people, maybe doing a listening tour, having meetings at the different schools, particularly French Road, where many people could actually walk to a board meeting or district meeting or Council Rock. I think it is important, and also to ask people face to face. We have these committees. Would you be interested in being on them? Let me tell you what's happening in our community in terms of these issues. Sometimes it just takes a few people to go out and maybe knock on a few doors and let them know. I think outreach is something, as much as I see a lot of great things in my email, I think we can improve outreach.
Thank you. Ms. Mano.
And outreach is important, and of course, we can always do a better job. There is an awful lot on our website, and I really have to give kudos to our staff and our communications coordinator. There is an awful lot there. I would love parents to go and visit it more often and read what's there, because we put pretty much everything we do on the website. But there may need to be notices, check it out, some more excitement. We need to generate more excitement for parents to go and read about all the great things that we do here in Brighton, because it is literally one great thing after another, particularly with the kids. What you talked about, the kids, it's just astonishing. We do host community meetings. Twice a year we have community meetings in the evenings. They are between sparsely and sort of well attended. But we try. We do try. And we could try better, we could try harder. We perhaps could move those to different locations suggested
More
during the
food.
day. Food is probably what we need to do. This is beautiful food. Maybe we'll have, there you go, there's the suggestion. So we can always do better, and it sounds like we need to do better, so we'll take that to heart.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien, you get the next question first. And I'm going to move away now and get into some of the curriculum, which is obviously the heart of many things that you do on a Board of Education. And the question that came forward is, the district has a strategic plan that is used in each and every aspect of the work to push continuous improvement. What do you know about the priority areas, and how would you support this work going forward? So you could just pick a area that might be a priority for you, and talk about how you would support the work going forward.
From a curriculum standpoint?
From the strategic plan that's put in place to improve, for continuous improvement.
Well, I think continuous improvement is always top of mind. I don't know. It could be any one of those.
That's why I said pick one. It's a general question, so pick an area that you might want to look at focusing more on for the district as a board member.
Well, it's not curriculum-based necessarily, but I'm going to go back to diversity because I just feel that is so important. And it's not about diversity, it's about inclusion. And Christina mentioned things, faculty recruitment practices, staff recruitment practices, in-services, seminars, webinars, conferences. There's so many tactics and strategies out there, and given the world that we live in, this is so important because there's so much out there that is just negative. And I think Brighton has a lot of positives, and we need to celebrate our difference, not run from it. So when it comes to curriculum development, it was said earlier, we need to embrace the inclusion of curriculum development. We need to make sure that it's adapted depending on skill level. We need to make sure that there are methods in place that address different learning abilities. It's not a cookie cutter, and I realize when things are customized and personalized, it costs more money, but that's where you have to get incredibly creative, because you certainly want to be fiscally responsible. We need to do the best we can by the students. And not all students are going to go to college. Not all students are going to go to get a job. They'll go into the military. They're going to do a bunch of different things. So I think we need to make sure that we are focused on all of those needs one way or the other.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee, you get it next.
I guess one of the ideas that I would continually improve is maybe cultural competency among our students in understanding the differences between their fellow students and also people that they will come across in their lifetime as college students or as employees in the global workplace. I think that would be a top priority for me. Also, looking at our place in the world, perhaps from a non-Western perspective, to see how we're connected globally, how we are interdependently connected globally. Those would be some of the things that I think that I would bring to.
Thank you. Ms. Scurro.
And those are excellent areas, as we've talked about before. We really are trying very hard in the diversity and equity area. We're working very hard. Part of our blueprint is a rigorous curriculum, and without dialing down to a specific area, that's very important because we really do want to challenge all of our students, and that would be a priority. Studying ways to engage more students in the rigorous curriculum, report card work. We review our curriculum on a regular basis. The board sits on these curriculum reviews. We have representatives every year. We tackle a couple of different curricula areas. And And so we're constantly striving to improve and look at the curriculum. Now, we don't do any day-to-day curriculum work. That's not our job. But we are engaged in that work every year. We tackle different areas. So the rigorous coursework is very important to me. And of course, obviously, we've talked about this, and as Mark said, we could really talk about it all night. The diversity and equity is a very important part of our blueprint as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Kakanovich?
So I think the question probably was about
Yeah.
forcing you to discuss one of the 5 priority areas for the year and maybe tying it to curriculum. I'm not sure, so I'm going to answer it the way I want to. Curriculum is important, and one of the points I want to make, Martha mentioned it, curriculum review. We have a very thorough and extensive curriculum review process in this district under Dr. Debbie Baker. We review all curricula on a regular, ongoing basis. One of the exciting things about that, this year we're reviewing social studies curriculum, and we have added very specific language to the curriculum review process from our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts so that all subject matter is now being reviewed as with regards to culturally responsiveness. So there's a whole list of criteria under every subject area review. So that's an exciting thing that we have not discussed much with the community. The other aspect of the one area I think where we've made a lot of progress that maybe has gone a bit unnoticed, the area that Martha mentioned, rigorous coursework for all students. About 5 years ago, we began a real strident effort to raise our graduation rate at Brighton High School for all students. We are at the highest graduation rate in the history of Brighton right now, total graduation rate over all subgroups. In the last 5 years, our African American students have gone from 55% to 95% graduation rate. So in other words, all of our subgroups, special education, free and reduced lunch, everyone is graduating at 95% or higher right now. And that effort has been centered around rigorous and available coursework for all and programs available for each individual student to meet their needs. And that has been a very concerted effort over the past 5 years that, again, some families know about and students know about, but not everybody knows about those efforts that have been undertaken. And I think all of us as a community should be very, very proud of that effort and where we stand with that graduation rate over all of our groups. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the next question goes to Ms. Lee first, and it is two-part. What is your view on New York State grades 3 through 8 standardized states tests? And the second part is, do you support parents' rights to opt out moving forward?
I do support parents' rights to opt out, and I recently learned that that children who opt out, I believe, have an unexcused absence, which surprised me. I would probably like to learn more as to why our children take standardized tests and what metrics it gives to the state. Is it? I don't believe it's tied to any funding, but I do support parents' option to opt out of the test.
Thank you. Ms. Mano?
Well, I do support parents' right to opt out, but truth be told, I wish they would not. I think there is value in testing. I wish there was less testing, and I wish we would get the results back in a more timely fashion so that our staff could really utilize them to inform instruction. So I do support testing to a certain extent. We all wish there was less, and certainly parents can opt out, but there is value in testing, and so it is a big decision. I don't think that I would opt my kids out, but certainly that's a parent decision they have the right to make. But we do find the results helpful of the testing, so I think it is important to take it.
Thank you. Mr. Kakanovich?
Yeah, I do. I also personally support a parent's right to opt their child out, and I am very supportive of our practice. I think we have a very transparent and open practice for parents to choose to have their children not take the test. I think it works for us. I think we are one of the best suburban districts in the entire state of New York in terms of participation rate of students and of parents who choose to have their child not take the test. I think we have reached the ground of accommodation for everyone. I will tell you this, I'm not hugely in favor of more testing. I will say that I think the grade 3 through 8 New York State testing is getting to a better place. The tests are now almost all written by New York State educators. They're reviewed and graded by New York State educators. And with going to computerized testing, I admit we had a glitch during the last session, and the vendor is working on that. But once we get computerized fully and the test days are even shorter, we will have immediate access to a student's performance. And I will tell you this, there is a validity to New York State testing to help subgroups of students who are underrepresented and underfunded. And that is a key component, not so much in our district, but in many districts. So there is an element of the greater good to this testing, and I think it can be utilized in Brighton to a greater extent once we get it all computerized and fully aligned with curriculum, which it will be over the next year or so. I also will tell you, I do think the New York State Legislature, before they close session, will decouple teacher evaluations by law from the testing, which still is coupled, even though there's a waiver to that and it's not applied to teachers. I do think that they will do that, and that piece of it will go away also.
Thank you. And Ms. O'Brien.
I think it's pretty much been said, but just to reiterate, I have not opted my children out of testing. I do believe there is value. I work in higher education. I see testing and group projects and proof of performance every day, all day. But I think we need a healthy balance. And I think that if parents feel strongly, and then that's their right to feel that. And if they want to opt out, that's their choice. And I do think the district does a really good job at putting in alternative options for students who are opted out. But I personally do see the value, and I don't believe in testing for the sake of testing, but we live in a world where proof of performance that's commonplace. It's in the workplace. It's in the military. It's everywhere. So whether it's a test or not, proof of performance is not going away through any child's life. But there should be balance, and I do agree with that.
Thank you. Ms. Scurro, Mano, we start back to you again. So, yeah, we're on question 9. A number of comments, and this was touched on, that's why I'm going to follow up with it. A number of comments are focused on college as the next steps for our kids. Do you think Brighton is responsible to help kids who aren't going to college as their next step?
Well, I think we could likely do a better job with that. I think all high schools focus and teach kids with the hope they will go to college. I think that for some children, for some students, other avenues might make more sense for them. There are parts of our curriculum that do that very well. We, coupled with BOCES, we have some options there to teach some skills to kids that would take them in a different path other than the traditional four-year college. But I always think we could do better there, and I think it's so important because whatever choices they make, you want them to be successful. That's our job. Our job is to make all our kids successful, not just the kids who want to go to two-year colleges, four-year colleges. So I believe we could do a better job with that.
Thank you. Mr. Kakanovich?
Yeah, I agree. I do think that we all recognize that the majority of Brighton students graduate from Brighton and go on to a 2-year or 4-year school. But I do think that we have a population, and it may be growing in some ways, that is looking for other alternatives. And I do think, this year I mentioned curriculum review. I sat on this year's review of the Career and Technical Education Review, which is Family and Consumer Sciences, Business, and Technology works together as a curriculum review. We visited BOCES, Monroe 2 BOCES, the Eastern Monroe Career Center, for those of you familiar out that way, where we always have a fair number of students studying careers. And one of the things we talked about, and I think we want to explore further, is earlier on, probably in 6th and 7th grade, exposing students and their parents to options available through career training. We might not want all to admit this, but one of the biggest difficulties in Brighton are parents who really don't want to discuss alternatives other than 2 or 4-year college. And the point being is you can do career and technical education along with 2 and 4-year colleges. So I think we need to do a little bit better job of educating parents and students probably in about the 6th and 7th grade level. We kind of don't do a lot of it now until about 9th grade. And so I think that those students and families that want to take advantage of that would have better knowledge base to plan the rest of their middle school and high school careers. So I'm in favor of that.
Thank you. Ms. Sabri.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. I mean, we talk about rigorous coursework, and rigorous coursework in K through 12 sort of puts you on a path for going to college, next step. But there are other options, and I do agree that parents that I talk to are not talking about those other options. But there's no stigma in not going to college. Many students are not suited to that. Many students have got different plans. But if they're not exposed early to other options, they don't know that they exist. You know, it's kind of like when I was much younger. My path was defined largely because I'm a woman. I wasn't exposed to science, technology, engineering, or math when I was in K through 12. But I want to make sure that my kids at least know that that's an option, especially because they're female. But if they want to choose to go into the military or go get a job or go get technical training, because apparently plumbers make a lot of money, they need to know those options exist. And because we're so focused on rigor, and rigor says college, we need to broaden our scope so that it's bigger than that. And if we are doing those things, great, but the community isn't aware of it. Because I think the perception is so drilled down on college track. Whether the student is going to be successful or not, we need to pay attention to what they will be most successful at. But without those options at the younger ages, they're going down a path they might not be suited to go down.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
I would also agree with everything that all of you said. I do see with my high schooler and her peers that there is a lot of pressure to go to the college path. And I think that it's a great idea to offer different opportunities at a younger age. Maybe we could do a field trip to the Applied Tech Center at MCC. I think it's a really important, you know, we are so dedicated to the rigorous academic coursework here at Brighton, but all children are different kinds of learners, and not all children want to go to college right out of high school. So I really like the ideas that we've all shared, and I hope we continue to work on those.
Thank you. Mr. Kakanovich, you get the next question
Okay.
first. And it's somewhat related, I think. What do you do to stay on top of and thoroughly understand the very different challenges and student population Brighton faces today compared to 15 years ago?
Well, I guess first and foremost, I think I personally, and I know our board collectively, we take advantage of professional development, both from Monroe County School Boards Association, New York State School Boards Association, and the National School Boards Association. So we are exposed to development around trends nationwide and locally and statewide in terms of populations and issues affecting populations. But I can tell you that being in schools like we are, in classrooms, in conversation with Dr. McGowan, confidential conversations around issues families are having, students are having. We are very much in touch with the needs of today. And I can tell you that one of the most difficult things to deal with today is so many more families, full families, students and families, have needs that go beyond what schools can really provide. Social, emotional issues and things like that, family issues. That affect an entire family. So I think what we've tried to do more and more of, and you'll see more of it as we move forward in the future with wellness supports and mental health supports, is working with families and local providers to help and make sure that not only the student, but family members have access to services that they need. You know, kids change, families change, needs change, times change, and there are just, I can tell you in the 25 years that I've lived in Brighton, when my young daughters first started school here, I guess anecdotally, but also we know factually from data, that there are just many more families that have issues that need assistance and help, that we are their first line to help them with that. And I think we're doing a good job of it, and we're looking at ways to increase that effort and be able to be that first line of support for almost anything that can come up.
Thank you, Ms. Sabri.
I used to do research, primary and secondary, many, many years ago. So I believe in the value of data and studies and reports and trends and all of that. But I think, 14 years ago, Facebook started. And I think a lot has changed since 2004. And the issues and the challenges kids face today are not the same as they were pre-Facebook, pre-smartphone. They're vastly different than most of the people in this room, 15 years ago. And while I think that it's great to pay attention on a national level or a state level in terms of what's happening and what's trending, but I get a lot of information, and I'm not on the board, from my kids because my kids are in the schools. There's only one board member, I believe, that currently has children in the schools. But I have kids in the schools right now, so I can tell you what they're feeling and what their friends are feeling. I also am paying attention to what's going on social media in parent groups. And that's what you need to be paying attention to, because those parents they're not shy. They're putting it all out there. Some should probably have a bit of a filter, as should I. But the kids are the pulse of what's happening in their lives, and the parents through channels that they can vent, they can get on a soapbox, they can do whatever. But that's where I'm keeping abreast of what is impacting what types of families and the challenges the kids are facing. We live in a technological age, and it is not like it was 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
I think too, one of the things that we could do better is perhaps not work in silos. I think sometimes we tend to just work in the work that, that's comfortable to us. But we could do a better job reaching out to the community and learning what needs are a priority for many of our families and our children. I think focusing on the family is an important one, because even though our children often have a place to come to get adult support, to eat, to be somewhere warm, that may not be the case for all of our families. So supporting the families, I think, will also make our students perform better. I think they will, they will see it as a safe haven, and I think our schools will become a safe haven for our families. So,
Thank you. Ms. Scurro, Mano.
Agree with everything that was said, and as a board, we are made aware of so many situations in the district. So we really do feel as though we are on top of it. Even though many of us do not have students still in schools, we have a lot of channels and parents, neighbors who talk to us constantly. As someone pointed out, parents are not shy about sharing what is important to their family and to them. So we do feel as though we are on top of it. It is a different world, and we constantly strive to make those adjustments. We talk a lot about the problems. We try to come up with solutions. Wellness is a top priority for us, mental health wellness, and making connections for both kids and families is absolutely key, especially now when some of the internet and technology connections are so impersonal. I think it's important to have those personal connections, and that will help with everything.
Thank you. Several of you brought up technology, both student use and district-wide use. And so there's a couple questions on the table about where you believe the district is with technology, where do you believe it's going with technology, both how it's utilized, both software and hardware. And Ms. Sabri, you get the question first.
Well, I work at a technology university, so I believe in technology. I think with technology comes power, in my opinion. And I think also with technology, it potentially creates a socioeconomic divide. So I think we need to be careful about making classrooms fully tech-enabled. I think, yes, we need to teach to that. Yes, people need to have skills, but technology can also be a downfall. It's already been mentioned how impersonal it can be. I'll be honest, and I'm a trailblazer, but I don't know why we're not teaching cursive writing. My kid cannot sign a mortgage. And maybe by then there'll be electronic signatures, but you still have to sign and scan it into a PDF, because that's how I do it at work. So I think we might have swung the pendulum a little too far. I think we need to bring it back a little bit. There's nothing wrong learning how to sign your name. I don't think there is. That doesn't mean we don't teach technology, we don't use technology. But my 8th grader doesn't do anything on paper. But I tell you, in my job, I do plenty on paper. Now, maybe because I'm old, but I'm not as old as some in the room. But we have to strike a balance. It can't not just be all tech. We need to create relationships. You could create better relationships by putting the tech away. But we have to be state of the art within budgetary reasons. But I think it's the best, I guess what I'm trying to say is we need balance. Technology is great, but not always.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
I would agree that we need balance, and really, to be frank, I have a 7th grader who is going to be an 8th grader next year, and I'm a little terrified when they roll out the tablets to the 8th graders. My 10th grader missed that study, so she was not part of it. My middle schooler is the one that I would be the most concerned about in terms of technology, in terms of the use of technology, in terms of forgetting how to sign her name. I think we do need to strike a balance. I think it's really important, especially working in higher education, that our students are equipped to work with the most current and the most effective data and technology. But I still want my students and my children to make face-to-face connections. I want them to read a book, and I really think we need to find that balance. So.
Ms. Mano.
Cindy, it's funny you bring up the cursive writing, because when I worked in Barnes & Noble, I can't tell you how many parents came in. Do you have cursive writing books? My kids cannot write at all. So absolutely, an absolute necessity. I was a holdout, really a holdout, a dinosaur on the technology, I have to admit. But I am so grateful for the leadership and guidance that Debbie Baker and Kevin have provided in our rollout of technology to take us to the next level. We are doing it slowly and patiently, and we are implementing it in a very thoughtful way. And the teachers are always asking, is this better with technology, or should I just use paper and pencil? And I really appreciate that, because as has been talked about, there is a value in reading a book, writing something, learning how to sign your name. So technology has its place. It absolutely does. We are all addicted to our technology. I am now the first one to say that, and I was the dinosaur. But I absolutely love the way we're rolling out our technology and very much appreciate it. I think the kids are benefiting for it.
And Mr. Kaganovich.
Yeah, I would say, answering some of the sentiment expressed here in the earlier answers, I would put people's minds at ease in Brighton. We have done it right. We visit classrooms, we meet with students, we discuss with them at all grade levels their use of instructional technology. Dr. Baker and others in the technology area, I served on that committee also. That was an instructional technology committee going back about 7 years ago when we started. And we made the very specific decision when all districts around us were handing out iPads to vast groups of 5th, 6th, and 7th graders. We didn't think that was a good idea, and we did not do that. And it's been a disaster in other school districts. We went a slow, methodical approach. That theme has been brought up a couple of times tonight. It takes us a while. But the rollout of that has been really fantastic. And I understand that there is some concern. We watch it, you watch it as parents. But the beauty of it is, in your K-12 experience of your child, they will have one-to-one technology. They will be in 2-to-1 and 3-to-1 settings. They will share work over a tablet, an iPad, a laptop. They will have a broad array of platforms and experiences in instructional settings, not playtime and not overwhelming. Most of our classrooms still use pencil and pen and paper on occasion. It's a real mix, so that focus on the K-12 experience, and I think you will see that this district is one of the very few that has done this right. I just knocked myself off the table.
Me too. You knocked me off the table.
I'm on a roll. One quick comment I will make. For those parents who are concerned about their students' use of technology, I really think we need to pay more attention to their use of their own smartphone. We're having real problems in schools and in classes with it, but more so outside of school. And behaviors and issues with uses of smartphones outside of school. So that area of technology, parents should be way more concerned about, in my view. Thank you.
Okay, so the last curriculum style question I'm going to ask, because we're running closer to the time. And Ms. Sabri, Ms. Lee, you get the question first. How, as a board member, do you monitor the code of conduct and understanding any disparities within discipline for the students of the district? I sort of reworded this question.
Yeah. So how would I understand disparity in discipline?
And how do you monitor the code of conduct
And
through
how would
that?
I
Yes.
monitor the code of conduct? For our students or for our?
As a board member,
board member.
you're going to be well aware of the code of conduct.
Yeah.
As parents of students, you're well aware of the code of
Yeah.
conduct. But as a board member, you have to understand how discipline is meted out across
Yeah.
K-12 for all student groups.
Yeah. So I would be very interested. So actually, just last week, actually, I had a really interesting discussion with the head of the Gandhi Institute, Kit Miller, who actually works in disciplinary issues in K through 12 schools in the city district. She uses, she applies restorative justice in her work. And I think it would be really important for us as a board to review our disciplinary policies and be aware of work that is going on right here in the Rochester area. I was so impressed with the work that they were doing at the Gandhi Institute, and in fact, I ordered a book for a program that I'm running myself. So I think that as a board member, I would want to be on top of current issues in terms of discipline in each of my schools, how they're being managed by our staff and our administration, and then really take a step back and see if it's equitable and fair to both the students and their families.
Thank you. Ms. Scurro Mano.
Restorative justice is great, and I know we're looking at that, and when I believe it was a trip to New York City where they were, as one of the schools was big into that was a poor way to put it, but they practice restorative justice a lot. There's a lot of resources in the Rochester area, including former Principal Mary Reed, who did a lot of work with restorative justice in the city school district. But getting back to the question of the code of conduct, we're well aware what our code of conduct does, but the board does not do the day-to-day discipline. So we would hope, and it is our expectation, that discipline is fair and equitable across the board. If it is not, we would need to be made aware of that, because, as I said, we are not in the room when the discipline is handed out, only at the tail end of a very serious or significant discipline situation. So that, I think, that's my answer to that question about the code of conduct, because we're aware of it, but we don't get into it day to day, and it is our expectation, our absolute expectation, that it would be fair and equitable, and if it is not, we will change it.
Thank you. Mr. Kakanovich.
Yeah, I'm going to answer it kind of a two-parter. The code of conduct itself is a living, breathing document that's reviewed continually and published for the year each year. As Martha said, the board doesn't weigh in directly into the creation of the code of conduct usually. Mostly at the building level, our assistant principals, counselors, teachers, and principals bring forward suggested changes, work through those with Kevin and the administrative team, and then we review that also, and it becomes a code of conduct that everybody, agrees to abide by. But I will tell you that we, on an ongoing basis, the Board of Education is aware and reviews with Kevin and principals and further, if necessary, where we are on discipline. Are we fair and equitable? What are we disciplining for? Categories of discipline. Is it equal? I will tell you right now that we are in some pretty deep study on disciplinary issues not disciplinary issues, but how we discipline at the middle school and the high school by subgroup. So are our African American students, Hispanic students, students with disabilities, are they disciplined at a higher rate percentage-wise? In most cases, they actually are because of numbers also, but why? So we're in a deep dive right now internally, looking at how students are disciplined, why are they disciplined, what are they disciplined for, and trying to look at that and understand that. Issues such as restorative type practices and things like that, those are issues that we continually review and utilize some of those practices right now. But moving forward, I would expect us to continue to take a look at that in a little bit more detail. And remind folks that the Board of Education, if a student is disciplined, they have a right, a parent and a student can appeal to the superintendent, and they can appeal further to the Board of Education in a disciplinary matter. Very few appeals come to our attention. So I hope that we're working that out collectively along the way.
Thank you. Ms. Sabri.
In terms of monitoring, I assume it's already been said earlier that our administrators, our teachers, our counselors, our psychologists, I assume they've got the pulse on things that are occurring and shouldn't be occurring within each of the buildings. So presumably the board is made aware of those things on a regular basis, and we have to trust the people in the buildings are presenting, a well-balanced picture. But while I agree with everything that was said about discipline and equity and all that, I think that we need to turn, and perhaps this happens, I don't have personal experience with this because thank goodness I don't think my kids have had to have a lot of consequences, but we need to make them learning opportunities. I don't think it's about discipline, it's about learning why, what was inappropriate, what you could do differently the next time. You learn as a manager of employees that you can't just give critical feedback. You have to be able to provide mechanisms and supports and how to correct behaviors. So I would hope that the board is helping administrators kind of set parameters around how to turn certain situations into learning opportunities. I think it depends on the severity of the offense and the behaviors. But behaviors don't change if we don't put practices and tools in place to help children change behaviors.
Thank you. It's 8:30, and to honor the PTSA and the audience, I'm going to move on to the 2-minute closings, starting with Ms. Scurro Mano.
Oh, okay.
Jeez.
I know.
Give her a couple seconds on this.
That's okay, yeah, I just am starting now, okay. First of all, thank you to PTSA for hosting this evening, and to you, Sherry, for doing such a great job as moderator. As I hope you've heard this evening, and over the many years, I've devoted much time and energy to our schools, and I'm so grateful for those opportunities. The diversity of those experiences helps me to bring a broad base of knowledge to the board and continues to help me make thoughtful, informed decisions. We are all so fortunate to live in this Brighton community where education is so highly valued and appreciated, and it is an honor to serve with 6 other dedicated people who are as passionate about Brighton as I am. Together, we strive to maintain a standard for our schools that our community has come to expect, putting aside personal opinions as we listen to everyone, to all sides, as we make decisions. Together with our wonderful administrators, teachers, and staff, we celebrate the accomplishments of all students. Together, we deal with tough budgets, difficult issues of the day, and outside influencers that threaten to undermine our efforts to do what's best for our kids. But here in Brighton, we work hard together to not lose sight of our priority, and that priority is our children. To that end, let us continue to give them the knowledge, tools, and opportunities they need to be the best that they can be. Let us celebrate the diversity that defines our district, diversity that is the very reason most of us chose to raise our families here. Let us keep our buildings safe and welcoming places where students are excited to come and learn. Let us staff our schools with bright and compassionate professionals. This is what defines excellence in Brighton for me. This is who we are. I am proud to be part of a long tradition of Brighton Boards of Education who are dedicated to this excellence, and it would be an honor to continue to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokanovich.
Well, thank you, Sherry and Debbie, and thank you all for attending or for viewing this Candidates Night this evening. As you have heard this evening, our district is a wonderful and welcoming home for students, families, and staff. Our students are doing very well. Our graduation rates have never been higher, including all the subgroups of students that I mentioned earlier. We've made very specific commitments and have taken action over the past 5 years that have closed the gap between all groups of our students. We have made the commitment to each child, the whole child in all families, our primary focus of our work. Financially, we're in very good financial condition due to some very prudent planning and our efforts to receive an unprecedented correction from Albany to our aid formula that is now in place permanently. Our buildings and capital plans are in great shape. We're in the midst of a carefully planned K-12 facility improvements plan. Those plans are active and ongoing, with planning in place to modernize all of our facilities over the next 10 to 15 years. We are actively engaged in our community in multiple ways and will continue to expand upon those efforts. I am proud of our board governance and leadership of our district. We have a wonderful relationship with Dr. McGowan and our entire leadership team and with our teacher leaders. We are partners in the continued review of what we do, how to grow, and how to always be working to improve, never resting on our laurels. I ask the community tonight, and as we move forward over the next 2 weeks, to think about the tremendous value of having experienced, knowledgeable, and dedicated board members committed to the work of this governing board. I love this work and am deeply committed to it and have the time, passion, and energy to devote to the work on a daily basis. I am asking for and would very much appreciate your vote to re-elect me to the Brighton Board of Education on May 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sabri.
I will be brief. I believe a great community combined with stellar leaders, dedicated staff, strong administrators, devoted parents, and a committed school board help shape our students to be responsible, resilient, and productive members of a very complex and ever-changing world. I am running for school board because I want to continue to do my part to help our schools build on our heritage of excellence. I am passionate about contributing to the success of our children and the schools that support their individual potentials. I would be honored to be a member of the Brighton School Board, and I will work closely with those who share my desire to realize these goals for our children through thoughtful management decisions and conscientious problem solving while remaining fiscally responsible. If elected, I look forward to fulfilling our district's mission and vision and helping to shape the future of our school district, working with all of you here in Brighton. And I, too, respectfully ask for your vote on May 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, and Ms. Lee.
Thank you. One of the ideas that I teach my students in cultural anthropology and sociology is that we're all born with a blank handbook. As we move through life, we start accumulating ideas and thoughts and processes to add to this handbook. It will include everything from how we identify our family to what language and how we learn to speak, whether we eat with our fingers or chopsticks, what side of the street to drive on, and who we choose as our friends. It informs how we navigate life, but we are not always in control of what is added to our handbook. Some of the pages can be filled with personal bias and acceptance of systemic discrimination because those are often the spaces that we walk in. Our educational institutions, where we were schooled and how we were schooled, takes up pages and pages in this handbook. We learn to raise our hands, we learn who has power and who does not. All the years that we're in school inform much of what is added to our handbook, not just what we learn in our classrooms, but what we learn outside of them too. This is why I'm compelled to run for a seat on Brighton's Board of Education. I know how important that the work that this board, our administration, teachers, and staff do each day to ensure that our students leave the Brighton Central School District with a handbook that allows our children to be critical thinkers and strong advocates of change. The wonderful thing about this handbook is that it is always changing. So if a page or two gets inserted that includes bias or discrimination, we can always add new pages that bring self-awareness and lessons for inclusion and appreciation of our differences. I am inspired by the dedicated members of this board and the enormous work that they have done, and in fact motivated by these three people at the table to run for this position in different capacities. It is in that collaborative spirit that I ask for your vote on May 15th. I'm the last name on the ballot. I hope to bring in a new perspective as a parent, as an educator, and advocate for our district. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to commend the four of you for taking this on. Board service requires a great deal of time and a huge commitment, and it's non-paid, volunteered, and all of you expressed both your knowledge, your experience, and your desire very well. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to our PTSA president.
Thank you, candidates, our moderator, Sherry Johnson, and audience members here and at home. Please remember to vote on May 15th. The polls are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Brighton High School, 1150 Winton Road South. The Al Lewis Scholarship Spaghetti Dinner is also that day from 4:30 to 7 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. The cost is $8 for adults and $5 for children 10 and under. The event is sponsored by the Kiwanis and raises money for the Al Lewis Memorial Scholarship. Please join us here at the next Brighton Central PTSA Board meeting on Wednesday, May 9th at 9:15 or Thursday, May 30th at 7 p.m. Help yourselves to refreshments provided by the PTSA. Thank you and good night.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.